Everyone, welcome to this AZ-800 Administering Windows Server Hybrid Core Infrastructure series. In this video, I will discuss the introduction to the Active Directory domain services, what it is, why shall we care about it, the components of ADDS, the Active Directory structure, and managing the identities in Active Directory domain services using different management tools. My name is Navneet Kumar and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. The module on Introduction to the Active Directory Domain Services covers these topics: defining ADDS, describe users, groups, and computers as identities, identify and describe the ADDS forest and domain structure, describing the organizational units, manage objects and their properties in ADDS, finally, a demonstration on managing objects in ADDS. Well, the Active Directory Domain Services is a part of Active Directory Suite. The Active Directory Suite contains several services like Active Directory Domain Services, Active Directory Federation Services, ADFS, Active Directory Rights Management Services, RMS, Active Directory Certificate Services, ADCS, and Active Directory Lightweight Directory Service, ADLDS. The Active Directory Domain Service provides you a full-fledged forest structure where you can have the domains deployed and you can have a centralized management of the identities like users or devices. This is used for authentication and authorization in the network. We can secure the resources by ensuring that only legitimate users or devices gain access to the corporate applications and resources. You can think of it as the heart of Active Directory, where all the important data about your network like users, devices, and security settings are stored and managed. On rest of the services like ADCS, FS, LDS, or RMS, we will be discussing later in this series. If I talk about the different partitions of the Active Directory domain services or the components, if I talk about the components of Active Directory domain services, it has logical and physical components. In terms of logical components, number one is the partition of this directory. This is the section of the Active Directory domain service that help organizing and distributing the information. Think of these partitions like the filling cabinets for different kinds of data to store. Next is the schema, which is the blueprint of this directory, and it decides that what kind of data can be stored in this database. Like a user or device kind of classes can decide that what kind of attributes can be used for these objects. We have the schema with classes and attributes. Next we have is the domain. The domain is a collection of objects like the users or computers that share the common database and the security policies. It's like a group of computers and users that follow the same rules. Then we have the domain trees, which is a set of multiple domains that are connected in a hierarchical structure and share the common domain name. It's like a family tree of the domain. Next is the forest, which is the highest level container of Active Directory domain services containing one or more domain trees. Think of it as the forest with multiple trees. These trees are like domains. Next is sites. Sites represent the geographical location that help with network traffic and resource access. It's like setting up the rules for how data flows in different areas. After that, we have organizational units. The organizational units are the containers inside a domain that organize the users, groups, and the devices in a way that makes managing easier to apply the policies or the role-based access control, also referred as delegation of control. You can think of it like a folder within a domain. Next is the containers. We have many default containers. They are special kind of OUs, you can say, with one exception, that they are not hierarchical in nature and cannot have the group policies assigned on them. If I talk about the physical components, the domain controllers have the database or the service of Active Directory domain service running on them. It serves to store and manage the copy of the ADDS database. They are used to authenticate and authorize the users and devices in the network. Think of them as the guardians of your domain's data. These domain controller servers can be physical or the virtual machines. Data stores is the next component. The database where all the Active Directory database or domain service information is stored. It's like the vault for your network's data. Your users, computers, and the groups are stored here. Global catalog servers. These servers hold a partial copy of all the objects in the forest. This partial attribute set helps in speeding up the search for the objects across the different domains within a forest. Next is the read-only domain controller. That is a special type of domain controller deployed in the remote branches where we have less technical expertise or the security implemented. We do not want to compromise with deploying a writable domain controllers in such areas or in such locations. Then we can think of deploying the read-only domain controllers. They are useful in these remote locations where security is a concern, as they can't be modified, so can be a good fit in such scenarios. In a nutshell, the Active Directory domain service is like a huge database that help organize and manage your network's data with a mix of logical and physical components that work together to make everything run smoothly. You will find a reference link of Microsoft Docs for more details on these topics. Next is the ADDS logical component. I discussed about the logical components in the previous slide deck. I talked about the partitions which are used to store the data. They are the filling shelves of the Active Directory. Schema is the blueprint. Domain is the collection of identities, users, groups, devices. Domain tree, where the same domain name is shared. Forest is the top level container which can have multiple domain trees, or a single domain forest can also be used. Organizational units to organize the objects like users, groups, or devices or computers, and to apply the group policy objects on them, and the delegation of control. Then we have containers is an object that provides an organizational framework for the use in Active Directory domain service. You can use the default containers or you can create the custom containers as well. You can't link the GPO, and they are also not hierarchical like the organizational units. These are the two important limitations of containers. The Active Directory forest is the topmost container. Here you see in this diagram that we have adatum.com under the Contoso root domain. Contoso.com is the forest root here, whereas the adatum is a tree. The forest can have the single domain forest, like it can be only contoso.com and then the child domains within it like seattle.contoso.com, whereas it can have multiple trees. Wherever I cannot use the contiguous namespaces, I cannot share the domain name, then I can think of deploying the tree root domains. A forest can have multiple trees within it. Whereas a child domain shares the name from the parent domain or tree root domain. It is a single label name, that is, for an instance, Seattle over here. So this is seattle.contoso.com. There are few things that are common inside one Active Directory forest, like the trust between the domain forest and the tree root domains or child domains is already there as a transitive trust. It uses a common root, a common schema, and the entire forest has the common global catalog for all the domain controllers which are configured as global catalogs. An Active Directory domain service domain is a logical administrative container which contains the users, groups, and computers. For an instance, the seattle.contoso.com can have a separate set of users, groups, and computers in it. The objects that exist in the forest root domain are the schema master role, domain naming master role, enterprise admins groups, and the schema admins groups. These are some of the important components that we will see in the upcoming modules of this course. We have different FSMO or flexible single master operation roles, and each domain can have these three FSMO roles like relative identifier, RID masters, infrastructure masters, and PDC masters. Whereas the two roles are the forest wide roles, the schema admin and the domain naming master. I have done a separate video on the FSMO roles and how to deal with them. I will put the link in the description of this video for your reference. You can watch that video for working with FSMO roles, how to transfer or seize these FSMO roles. That has also been covered to keep the length of this video short. What is an Active Directory domain service domain? The ADDS is a collection of the objects like users, groups, or computers, or any other kind of object like OUs. ADDS domain is often described as a replication boundary. The domain partition is replicated within this domain boundary. This domain partition contains all these objects like users, computers, or groups of that domain. An administrative unit, we can have the domain admins separately for each domain in the forest. An ADDS domain provides the authentication and authorization because each domain has its own local domain controllers deployed. The first type of object that we create in Active Directory domain service is a user account. This user account is used for interactive authentications to access the corporate applications and resources. We have different management tools that we can use to create these user accounts. The user is a class in the Active Directory schema which defines a set of attributes. Dozens of attributes are there that you can configure. Some of them you see in this screenshot here. For an instance, the first name, middle name, last name, full name, or the user principal name of the user, UPN, SAM account name. Then protected from the accidental deletion, the property you can configure, display name, office, email, web page. There are lots of attributes that are part of the user class. You can define these attributes as per your requirement. Next object is group, where we use this to make the users member of this group. The groups help in the assignment of the permissions. It becomes easier to assign the roles to the users by providing these roles at the group level. For that purpose, we have security groups. In case we want the permission assignment, we can go with security type of groups. In case we want the collaboration between the users, then we can create the distribution groups. This collaboration can be in the SharePoint or the Exchange. Maybe I want the distribution groups or a distribution list so that the email is distributed to all the members of this group. Group scopes we have of different types. Local group scope, this defines the boundary. The local group scope means that the domain group is actually local. It does not have anything to do with the domain. Actually, it can be used in a workgroup environment also. In a domain environment, we basically have three options: the domain local, global, and universal. The domain local groups are actually available within this domain. As the name suggests, they are not available in other domains, but they can have members from other domains as well. For an instance, a group or user in other domain can become a member of this domain local group. Whereas the next is global. This is reverse than the domain local. The global groups, as the name suggests, are available in the different domains of the forest, but they can have the members from the single domain or from the same domain only. Then we have the universal groups or group scope type that we can use within the forest. The members can be from the forest from any domain, and these groups are available anywhere in the forest. The computer objects also authenticate the same way the users do in the Active Directory domain. Whenever a computer joins the domain, a password is assigned to this computer account, and this password is managed by the domain controllers based on the password policies. This computer account authenticates using this password. This ensures a trust between the computer account and the domain. If this password has been expired, or if a computer account presents the old password, maybe because the computer was restored from a older backup than the 30 days, which is the default policy to rotate the passwords, or the system was not turned on for 30 days, then it may present the old password. If this is the case, then the trust relationship between the computer and the domain controller is broken, and you rejoin that computer to the domain. Well, we have the OUs, the organizational units, and these organizational units are used to create the hierarchical structure within our domain, because sometimes I don't need the tree root domain to have multiple child domains within it. Rather than that, I can work with the OUs. I can have a hierarchy created within my domain with the help of these organizational units. You cannot apply the GPUs to the containers, but that problem is solved by the OUs. Containers are used for system objects as the default location for new objects, whereas we also can change this default redirection, creating the OUs to configure the group policy objects and delegation of control. These are the two primary purposes of creating the organizational units within a domain. Talking about the Active Directory management tools, we have several Active Directory management tools like Windows Admin Center. The Windows Admin Center is actually a web-based console, and this can be accessed from any devices. This you can use to manage the computers and the computers that are running the Windows 11. This Windows Admin Center is the modern tool to do the management of the data center. Remote server administration tools are there. We call them RSET in short, and these tools are installed on the member servers or the client machines to manage the servers remotely. We have Active Directory module for PowerShell to manage the Active Directory through PowerShell commands to perform the bulk operations and automation. Active Directory users and computers is a old snap-in, or this is the Microsoft Management Console that we use to manage the users and computer accounts. Active Directory sites and services to manage the sites, subnets, and the services in the Active Directory domain. Active Directory domains and trust is used to set up the trust relationship. We can define the functional levels of the domain or forest as well from here. Active Directory schema snap-in is also there that you need to register, and then you can configure the Active Directory schema through this. In terms of managing the schema or the schema extension, you can apply through this. Let me take you through a demonstration where I will show you the management of the Active Directory objects. As I mentioned earlier, we can use different management tools to manage the Active Directory objects. The one I'm going to use here is the Active Directory Admin Center. I will click on Start. This machine has administrative tools installed on this already as remote server administration tools. I will go with the Active Directory Users and Computers is an obsolete tool, though we can use this as well to manage the user accounts. But Active Directory Administrative Center is the modern management tool for the Active Directory. This was first introduced in Server 2012 and is a PowerShell based tool. You will see that Windows PowerShell history is there, that you also can see side by side whatever the operations I do here graphically. Let me collapse this and go to my domain. This is contoso.com domain that I want to manage. I have some built-in containers or some OUs. The OUs have an icon on them that you see of the OU, whereas the containers that do not have the icon, they are the containers. They cannot have the OUs inside them further. If I go with this, I can delete it. If I go with this computers, what else I can do in this? I can create new objects but not the OU. But if this is an OU, then you can create the OU inside that for a graphical structure. For an instance, I want to create an OU inside my domain Contoso, then I can go to new object and organizational unit. I can provide the required parameters here. For an instance, this is for testing purpose. I'm creating this OU and I can provide the rest of the attributes, protect the OU from accidental deletion so that it ensures that OUs are not deleted accidentally. Otherwise, all the objects will be lost. I can go to this testing OU. You can see this PowerShell command that created this OU. Now I will go to this OU and create few devices here. So for that, I will go to this new. I will go back to my OU. I went to the wrong OU. So this is my Contoso, and under the Contoso, I created the testing OU. Well, this is the testing OU. Under the testing OU, I will create another OU in case if required, or I can create the accounts. Like I want to create a user account. User account is Navneet. These are the attributes. Contoso Navneet will be the same account name. The UPN will be same, Navneet at contoso.com, or if I want to keep it different, so I can go with that. This is optional attribute. So I will provide the required attributes here. User must change password at next logon, or you want to set it differently. These are the attributes. I will ignore these attributes here. The member of is a group membership that you can assign it at this moment or later on. If you want to make this user a member of a particular group, you can search for that if such group exists, and then finally you click OK. So the account has been created but is in the disabled state. You see this icon here. The reason behind that is because there was no password set for this user account. Let me reset the password for this account, and user must change password at next logon. Now the account will be in the enabled state. I will right click and enable this account. Well, this is how we can create a user account inside an OU. Now I go back to this OU and I go to this new, and then if I want to create a group, for that I can provide the name here. For an instance, it is the IT test and then the security type of group, and the group scope is, let's say, global. If we are creating the role based groups, role based means that IT is let's say IT admins. So I want all the IT admins member of this group. Then those role based groups are created with global group scope most of the times. Whereas the rule based groups that we use to assign the permissions on the let's say servers or resources that we have within the domain, but we want that the group can have members from other domains also, then we use the domain local. Global means that these groups will be available in other domains of this forest or any trusted forest. Now I will click OK on this and create this group. This is the IT admins group created inside this OU. I can double click on this and I can add the members to this later on from here as well. So I will go to the members and will choose the user as the member of it. I will search for the user Navneet and will make that user member of this group. This is how I can create a group and make the users member of this group. Well, this is one of the administrative tool to manage the Active Directory objects. Let me show you the Active Directory management through Active Directory users and computers. Before I move to that, let me show you one important thing here, that there are few things that can be managed only through the PowerShell or through this administrative center, because it is PowerShell based. For instance, enabling recycle bin for Active Directory. This feature was first introduced in 2008 R2 servers, but we were less likely using it because it was complex to use, because it was manageable through PowerShell only. But thanks to the admin center, that we have got a graphical tool here in PowerShell based tool we have got here. So in this tool we have the option to enable the recycle bin, and once it is enabled, then you can refresh. It can't be disabled. And now if you accidentally delete any object, for an instance you got one user account deleted, then you can recover this account with all its attributes without any hassle. Because in this Contoso domain, you will see there is a container created as deleted objects. All the deleted objects will remain in this recycle bin, and you can restore them to the previous location. So original location, and it was this. The account has been restored. If I take you the properties of this and I show you the member of property, this user is member of IT admins and sales group. So it has been restored with all its attributes. Well, let's see the management of Active Directory objects through the Active Directory users and computers.
Under the server manager, I will click on Tools and Active Directory users and computers. If I show you the domain controllers available in this domain, these are the two domain controllers. This is the domain which is contoso.com. This domain has two kind of objects right now. One is the container, default container. Second is the organizational unit. Where you see the icon with the directory symbol, it is the organizational unit. Rest of them are the containers. There are few key differences between the organizational units and the containers. Like, organizational units are hierarchical in structure. That means that you can have an organizational unit inside another organizational unit. You can do the nesting of that. If I right click and click on new, I have the option to create the organizational units. For an instance, I have the domain controllers in East US region. So I will create an organizational unit over here in this OU. But if you look at the containers, there is no option to create an additional container or the organizational unit inside this container. So they do not have the hierarchical structure. The second difference is that we can link or apply the group policy objects on the OUs, but not on the containers. If I take you back to this server manager and launch the group policy management console and show you the group policy management, you will notice that under this domain, it will list you the OUs, but not the containers. So domain controllers OU is here where I can create and link the GPOs, but the containers option is not there. So containers cannot be used to apply the group policies for your organization. This is how you will decide that where your objects will stay. You can move these objects from one OU or container to other container. For an instance, this is USDC 1. I can right click and move this object for the management purpose to another OU. So under the domain controllers, I have East US. I will click on that and I will move it to that location. Under the East US, I have got this USDC 1. This is how you can move the objects from one container to other container. If I want to create the organizational units inside this domain, then I will choose this domain and right click and new organizational unit. For an instance, this is going to be the OU for sales users. Now I will right click and create the users or groups inside this OU. I can create these OUs based on the functional roles of the users or the computers. For an instance, this is for sales users, but if I want to use it as a resource forest and this forest will have the resources, then I can create the organizational units for my servers or printers. So for an instance, this is for file servers. I will click OK, and there will be an organizational unit for file server computers. Well, after this deployment of the organization unit, your next task will be to create the user accounts. To create the user account in the sales OU, I will right click on the OU and click new user. I will provide the user a name, for an instance Don Jones. Don.Jones at contoso.com is the domain name. I will provide a password as per the password policy of my organization, and will ask the user to change the password at the next login. If you don't want, you can check this box, so you can remove and then say user cannot change the password, or password never expires, so password will not expire. It will not or it will overrule the password policies. And account is disabled, so if you want to create the user account but leave it in the disabled state, so you can do that, and then click finish. This is how the user accounts are created. I ignored many of the parameters for this or attributes for this user, like the description of his telephone number, email ID, web page, address of the user, the account, the profile, the telephones, the organization, the sessions, there are tons of properties for the user account or for this user class in the Active Directory, I must say, that we can provide as per our requirement. Now, if I want to create a group inside this OU, so I can click on new, and this time I want to create a group. For an instance, this group will be for salespeople. It's a role-based group I'm creating. This is a security group and it's a global group. So the group type is security. That means it will be used for delegating the permissions. Whereas if you do not want to use it for permissions but just for grouping some users and want to use them as the distribution list, or for sending the emails in bulk, or for any other application like Exchange, SharePoint, then you can use the distribution type of the group as well. In the group scope, we have three options. Domain local, that means that the group will be available within this local domain, and the members can be assigned to this from any domain in the forest. But in the global group, this group will be available in the forest to other domains as well, and members, it can be a member of the groups of other domains, and not only the domains within your forest but any trusted forest you have, so it will be available. Universal will leave it limited to this forest where you want to use it. So based on your requirement, you will choose the group scope, then click OK. This is how you can create a group. If you want to make a user member of this group, so you can either go to the user properties or the group properties. You can do it from any location. If I'm going to the group, then I will go to the members list and I will add the users as the member of it. So I will search for user Don and check names for that user and will add it. Or if I show you from the other direction, then I will open the properties of this user and will go to the member of Blade. This user is member of domain users group. Now I want to make it a member of sales group. So this time I will search for sales and then add this into this list of the groups. This is how we can create a group in Active Directory users and computers. Then if it is about computer management, so as soon as a machine joins the domain, it comes under the computers container automatically. But if I want, I can create a computer object also in advance. This is called pre-staging of the computers. So I can go to the computer and then put the computer name over here and add that account here. Why do we do this pre-staging? The purpose of doing pre-staging is that I want that when the machine will join, the computer will join, it will be redirected to a particular OU. And all the policies applied on that OU must be effective immediately. Rather than first the computer comes to the computer's container, like I mentioned that this is the default redirection of the Active Directory to this container. Then the computer account, I will have to move to the required OU. But what I can do is, suppose I'm planning to deploy a file server. So I will right click and create a new computer account over here. And let's say this is going to be the East US file server 1. So if I will have a computer account with this name and I will join that computer to the domain, so that computer account will automatically come here because the account is already there. So as soon as the machine with this name joins, will automatically land to this OU, and whatever the group policies applied on this OU, they will be effective immediately. And earlier that the default redirection container for computer objects that join the domain is computers container. So any machine joins this domain will automatically land into computers container, and for users it's users container. For an instance, you want to perform some bulk operations and you want to change this default redirection to any other container or OU, then you can do it through the command line tools. All you need to do is you need to launch the command shell, and you need to ensure that the command shell is running as administrator and you have the necessary permissions in the domain. You are domain admin or enterprise admin or a delegated administrator to do this task. So there is a command called redirect CMP for the computer's redirection to change, and USR for users redirection to change, default redirection. Now you need to provide the distinguished name over here inside the double quotes, the distinguished name of that container where you want to move the objects automatically. So for an instance, this is OU. So if it is OU, I will go with OU. If it is container, so I'll go with CN. So because I want to move the computers, let's say by default to file servers OU, so I will go with file servers. So I will define it here, file space servers. It's not case sensitive. DC equal contoso, DC equals comp. This is the pattern of putting the distinguished name for the containers or the OUs in a particular domain. If I hit enter, then you notice that the redirection is changed successfully. So now onwards, if any computer account will be joining the domain and a pre-staging is not done, that computer will come automatically to file servers OU. If I want to change this default redirection of the users, then I can say redirect user. Okay. And where do I want to redirect these users? I want to redirect them to the OU, which is let's say sales. For instance, I'm going to perform some bulk operations to add the users to the directory. So they will be redirected to the sales OU automatically. If you want to know this distinguished name, then you can check the attribute of those particular OUs or containers, and you go to the properties to check this distinguished name, and you see there are limited parameters by default shown by Active Directory users and computers. You need to go to view and enable the advanced features. Some hidden objects will also be displayed along with this. Now you will go to the properties of a particular container or OU, and then here it will show you the object, and this is the object that we have, and the objects have the attribute editor, and there is distinguished name attribute of this which is mentioned over here. So that's how you can identify the organizational unit distinguished name. Now after this, if I create some users, let's say I want to deploy some users through the command line tools, some bulk operations I want to do. So I go to the server manager and I go to the tools and launch the Active Directory module for Windows PowerShell to do the management through PowerShell. Now I use the command to create a new Active Directory user. So new AD user is the command, and then I provide the user name, and this user account name is, for an instance, Navneet. and I do not define the path for this user. We have a parameter called path where we can provide the distinguished name for that user. Okay, so I mean for that OU, where do we want to create that? So if I create this user account without defining any path, so it will go to the default redirection container, and that default redirection container I defined is this sales OU. You will notice that user Navneet will be created here instead of users because I changed that default redirection to sales. User account is disabled, as you see this arrow on this user, because I have not provided any password to the user account. If you create the users without password, they remain in the disabled state. Well, this is how we can change the default redirection of the objects to the defined or specific containers of the OUs, or else we can do pre-staging of these objects. Now let's talk about the management of these objects through the PowerShell in more details. So to work with the PowerShell, you can launch the PowerShell from the server manager as well. From the server manager, you have the option to launch this PowerShell for Active Directory modules. What it does is actually it has imported the module automatically to the current session. So if I go to get module, I will see this Active Directory module over here. In fact, I could have launched the PowerShell directly from the start button or from here, and this is also the PowerShell console. I increase the font size a little bit, and right now the default module is not loaded this time, so get module, and you see there is no Active Directory module. But don't worry, as soon as you will run any command, for an instance I want to get the Active Directory user from this directory with the identity Navneet, so this module will be loaded automatically in the background. So this command get AD user belongs to this module Active Directory, the module has been loaded. So you can launch the PowerShell from anywhere and start working with this module. This module was copied during the installation of the Active Directory domain services. I have done a detailed video on PowerShell modules, how to deal with these PowerShell modules and how to find the commands from these modules also, because you should not memorize the commands in any command shell. You should understand the logic. So if I know the module name that it is Active Directory, then I can get all the commands from that module. It will list me all the commands, whether they are to create new objects or to retrieve the objects or to remove the objects or to restore set. So these commands are in that verb hyphen noun syntax. Now if you want to filter these commands further, suppose you want to create something new, a new object you want to create, so then you can define the verb here, and the verb is going to be new. So it will show you all the commands with this new verb. Now for an instance, I want to create the organizational unit through this. So I will use this command new AD organizational unit. I will provide the name for this organizational unit. For an instance, this is for research purpose, and then I will hit enter. There might be more parameters in this, but those parameters were optional. So that is why I just defined the name, because I see the name parameter is mandatory. Parameter and value are not enclosed in one bracket, that makes it mandatory. Whereas any other parameter you see, the parameter and its value that it need are enclosed in one bracket. It means it is optional. You can go without that. So during the creation of organizational unit, I could have defined the authentication type, the city, country, credentials, descriptions, all these things I could have done. But I can set these attributes later on as well. So if I get the command by this noun is AD organizational unit. So I will be able to see the command, and I have a command set AD organizational unit. Now I can define the identity here. For which identity? For an instance, this identity is research OU, for which I want to define some attributes like city or the email or the pass-through, you see managed by instance state. So some attributes or the description. I can do it directly this way, or I can get the AD organizational unit. This command I can run, and the identity name is, for an instance, I want to get this by the name of this OU, which is research, and I hit enter. It will return this OU, get AD organizational unit, and this will actually require it in the uh, distinguished name format. It is saying cannot find the object by the name research, and I believe I created that OU. So no, I did not created that. That is why it did not find it. So I will create the organizational unit. So this is the, oh, I will now do this new AD organizational unit, and the identity I want to define, or the name. The parameter here is the name actually, and research, and um, I okay, I created that object, I think. Yeah, oh, excuse me, I created this object, so it's already there. Well, if I get the AD organizational units and I hit enter, so it says which one you are looking for. I said filter for all of them. I got all of these, and the name is this research. So get AD organization unit, and the parameter I can use here is identity, and this identity is going to be the OU equals research, the distinguished name for this research, and dc equals contoso, dc equals com. Here we go. In this way I can look for the OUs. In case I need more than one OU, then I can do filter star. It will get all of them like earlier you saw. Then I can filter them also with the command, let's say where object, and by a particular attribute, for instance the research, or by file server, or by any attribute like name or state or something like that. So what I did here is, let's say where object property. Which property? Let's say the name property. I want the name property like, let's say F star. So this property can be anything with F. So it will get all of these OUs with starting with F, and then I will pipe it into set AD organizational unit, and I can provide some, let's say, description for this. So for testing purpose I'm doing it. The city, the country is, let's say, 2-letter code US I have provided. So it will get the OUs based on your filter, and then will put this attribute to all of them. So now I've got the one AD organizational unit set with this. For an instance, I want this for all the research related OUs, so R, and then this time I set this attribute for them. Now I can find them by their country or by any attribute. So when I was doing last time the get AD organizational unit filter star, it was getting all the OUs. But suppose I want to filter them, so I will say where. I can either do the filtering here, or I can define the filter query here itself. So where name, or this time let's do it by country attribute. So country, and country equals to, and I put the country equals to as US. So I will get those OUs which have this country. Okay, this country is set to. So that's how I can define the attributes for these OUs. Now in these OUs I can create the objects. So to create these objects like users or groups, I will use the command to make new AD user to make the user accounts. User accounts name, let's say user accounts name is Brad, and this user accounts path will be, otherwise it will go to the defined container. So sales container, maybe I want to define this user in the research OU. So I will say path OU equals research, and comma dc equals contoso, comma dc equals com, and I will create this user account in that OU. I can create the group also in the same way. New AD group. The command has many parameters like the name for the group scope you need to define. There are some validate set values that you can put. Credentials, the description, display name for this group category, like whether it is distribution security. So you provide these parameters. For an instance, the name is research, and the description is for testing purpose I'm doing it. And if I want to create this group as a group category as security, the group scope I can define. By default it is global. You can change it to anything like domain, local, or universal as well. This is how you can create the groups. It will be created into the default container, so I need to define the path of this where I want to create it. So path is going to be the distinguished name that I used, this one. So there we go. I will take this distinguished path of my research OU. The group will be created. Now if I want to deal with these objects, like I want to make this user a member of this particular group, so we have the command to work with that. Add AD group member. I will define the identity. If you look for the help for this command, so in identity you will provide the Active Directory group, and then in members list you will provide the members. So I will get the I will add the users to this group. So add group member. The identity, in the identity I'll put this research. So this is actually research, and then the members. So what are the members? Let's say user Navneet will be member of that, user Brad will be member of that. So this is an array. Members is AD principals it will require, and it can add these users to this group. Now if I get the AD group member, and I look for research group, that what are the different members in that group. So these are the users which are part of this group. So this is the PowerShell command that is to deal with the group membership of these users. I shown you those hundreds of commands for this module. So get command from the module Active Directory. Whatever the task you want to perform with these users groups, the commands are there. You can filter them by, let's say, noun group. So what are the all activities I can do with the groups? I can do all these. I can modify the group. I can add the members to the group. I can get the group or get the group members. I can get the membership, get AD principal group membership, that this principal is member of which group. So get AD principal group membership, and what parameters are there? Just take help. Identity, you need to provide the AD principal. So identity is going to be, let's say, AD group, AD principal group membership for Navneet. So Navneet is member of these groups. One of them is the domain users group, and the second one is research that I added this user to recently. That's how you can do the management of these users and groups through the PowerShell. But if you want to perform the bulk operations, that you also can do. So you can create a CSV file, let's say users.csv file, and you will put the attributes into that file, like the name, based on the parameters available in that command, in that new AD user command. So you will put those parameters. For instance, SAM account name, which need to be a security account manager. So SAM account name, and then which is a unique name for each identity provided, and then the department, which department this user is part of. Such attributes you will provide. So user LX, SAM account name of the user is LX, the department is going to be sales. I want to create this user into the sales. Okay, Alan sales, this user account will be created into the sales. Okay, so this is how you can provide the attributes: city, state, country, all these attributes comma separated. I'm keeping it short with the 3 attributes and only 2 users this time, Alex and Alan. and then I will save this file. I will also show you these parameters where from you will get those parameters. You need to keep these CSV attributes same as those parameters. So the command is new AD user, which has tons of parameters. I choose the name from here. I used the department attribute as well for the users. So country, this is department I used, and I used the same account name. So this one I used. Rest you can use company, city, all these parameters are written to accept the pipeline input. What do I mean by pipeline input? If I get the or I import this CSV, which is users.csv. So it has these two objects with three attributes. If I will pipe the CSV objects into this new -AD user command, so this name parameter can accept the input from pipeline by property name if the object has a matching property. So I made a matching property name. So there is a match. There will be a match for SAM account name also to provide a unique name, and then department. So department match is there with that property department. So because there is a match with these properties, now I need not to provide any other parameter, and it will create these users with these attributes. But suppose if they have some common attributes, like their country is US, their state I want to mention, or their group membership I want to provide, or for an instance I want to set the password for them. So that also I can do. So all those things I can do over here. Let's say country is US, the path where I want to create them. So I want to create them into the sales OU. So OU equals to sales, DC equals contoso, and DC equals com. In fact, it is that default container I have defined. You remember that redirect user command that defines the default location. If I don't define the path, they will automatically be created in that OU. So I created those two users, and if you go to this OU, the sales OU, you will find two users over here. If I refresh LN and LX, I have not provided the password to both of the users. That's why they are in the disabled state. In my CSV, I could have mentioned that password and used that as well. So whatever the sort of automation bulk operations you want to perform, that is possible with the help of command line tools. So these commands may look a little bit complex to use, but they help in saving time to perform the bulk operations. If you were supposed to create two users through Active Directory users in computers, you had to create them one by one. And think about creating 200 or 2000 objects into the Active Directory. So these command line tools will ease the job. Not only the PowerShell commands are used today, of course, PowerShell is popular and it is very easy scripting language. And I have done a complete series on PowerShell. In case you want to learn PowerShell for this day-to-day administration and automation, you can visit to my channel, and there is a series on PowerShell where you will learn each and everything about the PowerShell. You can become a PowerShell pro in automation. So now I can use traditional command line tools, though I do not recommend them to use. Actually, they were used in that traditional command line tool CMD. So if I go to the CMD, now you see I'm on the CMD, and in the CMD PowerShell commands will not work, of course, right? You don't see PS over here. So then we had the command DS, and with that DS we have many operations that we could define, like DS add, DS get. So anyways, it's not detecting that, so I will go with DS add. I will define it. Okay, DS add, I think hyphen question mark we do. DS and I think it is DS one word, DS add. Yeah, it is DS add. So if I want to add the computers, so I will go with DS add computer or DS add contact user. What do I want to add? So I can use this let's say DS add for adding the user. So I will say user. Okay, so I can choose that accordingly. This is to add, but if I want to get to do the inventory or to modify, to move the objects across the containers, I can do it also. So I have those commands as well. So DS add user, and this user, I need to provide the distinguished name, or I can take help anytime over here. So it will give me the idea that how to do this. So ds add, and you're going with the user. Okay, so ds add user, and the user that I want to create is, let's say, cn equals user, cn equals user nav. I want to create it into the ou equals research, dc equals contoso, dc equals com. The distinguished name I have provided, and where the user is supposed to be created. And this was the command ds add, and succeeded. You see the command is succeeded. And if I go to the research ou, here we go, sales, and I created an ou called research as well. Let me figure it out where it is. This is somehow not refreshed, so I will close this and launch the Active Directory users and computers once again. Or I can check that object from the PowerShell also, or through ds-get command. So you see user nav is also created, and this time this user was created using this traditional command line tool ds add. So we have commands to add the users, computers, groups, to add them, but I can move them also, I can query them, I can remove them using this. But it becomes handy to do the management through the PowerShell. So if you go to the PowerShell now, you see PS over here. And if it is about removing the Active Directory objects, it's quite handy to remove the users, like remove ad user. That is the command. The identity, the user account nav need to be deleted. So it's waiting for my consent that do you want to delete it? Yes. This is a should process. If I want to have a preview of this, that okay, what this command will do, for an instance user navneet, and I say what if, so it will show you that what will happen if you do this. But is the user account deleted? No, it was just a preview it was showing. So I have done a video on that also, support should process, adding it into your functions or commands, how it works. The all technical deep dive is available in that PowerShell series. So look for the video on support should process. Get ad user. If I get this user identity navneet, you will find that user account is still there and is not deleted. Well, this is how we can manage these objects. This video can be quite big using the PowerShell. I mean, I can do all sort of automation of the Active Directory and show you those hundreds of commands that are there in PowerShell for this. But this video will be then very long, and like I mentioned that I already have done a series, the entire series on PowerShell. So you can visit that series and learn about the PowerShell, how to use it to manage the objects, and not only Active Directory objects but anything you can automate using that. So I recommend you to visit that series and learn the PowerShell from there. So this is the set of command available in this module. The key takeaway is that we have seen how we manage the Active Directory objects efficiently using the PowerShell for the automation for bulk operation purpose. We also can use the user-friendly tool, which is Active Directory users and computers. We also have a tool which is PowerShell based actually, that is Active Directory Administrative Center, and you can prefer using this tool as well when you want to do the operations graphically. So you can use this tool. For an instance, inside this file servers, you want to create a computer object, so new computer, and this is going to be your file or us file server 2, and then you want to create it. So you will notice that that operation is completed through the PowerShell. So at the back end, it is using this PowerShell command, new AD computer was used. So this tool can be used to perform the operations graphically, Active Directory Administrative Center. I hope this tutorial was informative to you. If you have any doubts, questions, please do let me know in the comment section. You want me to do a video on any Active Directory feature or service, please do let me know in the comment section also. Thanks for watching, and do subscribe my channel for more videos. Thank you.